All right, let's talk carburetors here. This here is a basic Honda carburetor, manual choke version. But I'm just gonna go over, what makes up a carburetor and just a little, tutorial for you guys. So this is what you call the choke linkage here. This is the choke side of the carburetor, and this here is the throttle linkage, and what controls the basically the RPMs of the engine. Well, technically it's the governor, but this controls the air and fuel that is being supplied to the engine. So this here is a manual choke, which means that when you put this in choke, it will then release the choke. It's not an auto choke version, but either way, it's a pretty common carburetor. Um, so as you can see, the carburetor has three different orifices here. This one here is to allow air into the float bowl, and that's to prevent the fuel from becoming vapor locked. So when it comes into the fuel inlet, that's what this is. Fuel comes in here, fills up the carburetor. Well, as it keeps cycling that fuel in, well, this float or the bowl can become vapor locked. So this is what allows air in to keep the airflow or from the fuel from becoming vapor locked. So it's kind of like um, when you go to pour gas out of a gas can and it's like chugging. It's like it's just barely coming out. But when you release that little cap that's on the backside of the tank, then the fuel just flows nice and consistent, nice and easy. This is the same concept. These here are to help with air coming into the carburetor to creating air and fuel to become vaporized. This left side goes into the actual carburetor here, and it actually goes into the main jet emulsion tube, and that's where the mixture and all the magic is happening. This one here supplies air on the backside here. It goes through the actual pilot jet here. It goes past that, and it goes into these orifices right here that are on the inside of the carburetor. So as you can see down in there, maybe you can see that, but there's some tiny holes in there, and then that's what's allowing the air and fuel to be mixed. Whenever this throttle plate is opening and closing, it's going to close off those little holes right there to allow air and fuel to be supplied more or less. Okay, so now let's look at the inside of the carburetor. We will take off the float bowl nut. Sometimes this is your main jet. On Hondas, the main jet is inside the pickup tube. This is a float bowl here, and the gasket is on the ring here. So that's a bowl gasket. This here is called a float. So as this works is fuel is going to be coming into the carburetor, and as it comes up and it rises, it has to be shut off. If not, fuel is going to constantly be coming in when the engine is off, or even when the engine is running. You can't have too much fuel in the carburetor because it's going to leak past that point. So as the fuel goes in, it's going to raise this bowl up. It's like a float, right? Like on a toilet, and it shuts off the fuel flow that's coming in from the fuel inlet here. And that's all this float does here, okay? And then this is the hinge pin or the float pin, whatever you want to call it. That's what that is there. Okay, now we're left with and here's the float, and always make sure there's no fuel in this. Make sure that this is not cracked. Throw it on some water and it'll literally float in place. So this here is called the needle valve. So this needle valve, sometimes the seat on some carburetors is this rubber piece. The seat is normally inside of the fuel inlet, and this is what allows fuel to come in and into the carburetor. And on Hondas, they put the seat on the actual needle. So as the needle valve opens and closes, it's shutting off the fuel flow because of the float here. So as the float comes up, it's going to shut off fuel. Okay, so this here is called the main jet. And the main jet, like I said, sometimes the main jet, like on Briggs, it's in the actual bowl nut. But on Hondas, they put it in the actual pickup tube. So this here is where all the magic happens in this tube. This is where fuel is going to be coming up. And there's the gasket I was telling you about. This is where the fuel is going to be coming up and vaporizing for the most part. So let me go ahead and take this out here. Sometimes they're a little bit of a pain to come out, but you just give them some love taps with a screwdriver and eventually they'll fall out. So this is called an emulsion tube, okay? The emulsion tube has these little orifices on it, and that's what allows I think will stay right there. That's what allows everything to become vaporized. Is the magic happens in this pickup tube and around and through this emulsion tube. It's specially designed to allow the perfect ratio of fuel and air in through the inlet. So this here is the main jet. It just has one hole through it, and you got to make sure this is clean. If not, you're gonna have a lot of problems. So, and it simply is just screwed into place, nice and easy. And there's nothing fancy, nothing tricky about it. It just literally threads into place, and that's how that works. So that's pretty much all the basics to a carburetor. I mean, I can go on and on about carburetors, but that's pretty much how it works. So this is called, I'll tell you one more thing. This is called the intake here, right? And this is shaped like an hourglass. So down on the inside there, you can tell that it gets smaller down in there. And what they call that the Venturi effect, is when you take airflow into a tapered tunnel, and you open it up, it's going to actually create vacuum and speed up the air and fuel past this. So down in the inside there, where I just put that emulsion tube, you can see it down in there, that is what's picking up the fuel. And so it's kind of like if you take a straw, you put it into your soda or your drink, and you blow over the top of that straw, it's going to pick up fuel. You will literally spray fuel by blowing over the top of your straw, and it'll pick up fuel. The same thing is happening with this carburetor here. And so that's a little tip for you guys. This is kind of just a quick basic 101 of how a carburetor essentially works. And now you get into more jets and different, double barrel carburetors. And I mean, you get into automotive where it's like four barrel, and then it goes, it goes on and on. But this is basically the basics of a carburetor on a mower. And I hope this helped you. If it did, hit the like button. And that's all I got for you guys today.